Hello, everyone, and welcome to the iSpring Solutions webinar series, where every week we talk about e-learning trends, share iSpring tips and tricks, and cover clients' cases. My name is Paulina. I'm the community manager at iSpring, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar, where we are going to have a very special presenter, Andraya Goodwin. Hi, Andrea. How are you doing today?
Hey, Paulina, I am doing so good. I'm super excited for today's webinar.
Wonderful. I'm excited as well. So, Andrea is an instructional designer with a passion for creating fun and engaging training materials. She has also mastered iSpring and even made a video series on how to design a course in iSpring and PowerPoint from scratch. And today, she will actually share with you 10 tips and tricks on how to make slides more modern. And I have good news for everyone who, for some reason, cannot sit through the whole session. This webinar is being recorded, so guys, no worries. You will receive a link to a replay sometime after the webinar. However, I would like to encourage you to stay till the very end because it's a great opportunity to address your questions directly to our presenter. And to do so, please submit them in the question box, which you will find on the right side of the GoToWebinar panel. Okay, I think at this point we are ready to begin. So, Andrea, let me pass the mic over to you.
All right, everyone. Well, hello, and thank you so much for joining me for today's webinar. I am so excited to be partnering with iSpring Solutions to come and chat with you about one of my favorite aspects of being an instructional designer, and that's being creative in our roles to create awesome content. Now, you may be wondering who I am, and to be honest, I'm sure I'm not too different from many of you guys out there. My name is Andraya Goodwin, and I'm an instructional designer in Dallas, Texas. So we are here to chat about modern design. And before we hop into my tips and tricks on how to make your design content more modern, I want to discuss why modern design is so important and what modern design is exactly. So let's go ahead and start with why you should be implementing modern design techniques in your training content. Now, in my personal opinion, one of the driving factors in why it is so important that we design with a modern eye is due to a cultural shift in popular media and advertisement. Not more than about a decade ago, advertisements would exclusively feature a perception of an unattainable perfection, typically in the form of a skinny runway model eating a cheeseburger or something like that. And the media would design scenes that were so fake and so unrelatable that graphic designers had to actually Photoshop the models just to hold on to that unattainable perception. But now, our culture has embraced utilizing advertisement and the media more so as a mirror of what real life is actually like. This cultural shift from showcasing the unattainably perfect scenario to showcasing a mirror of people's actual experiences has accustomed our learners to begin to expect content that is relatable to them, that feels familiar, and that delivers a specific message. All right, and actually, these three characteristics are what I believe actually make up modern design. So let's go ahead and break down each of these, starting with relatability. So when we are discussing modern design, we really need to be talking about the modern learner. The modern learner wants to see a piece of themselves in the content that they consume. They want to be able to relate to it, and this means using images of real people who are engaging in real activities and being cognizant of diversity and variety and straying away from images that are staged or feel too stuffy. Now, the next characteristic of modern design is familiarity. You can create a sense of familiarity by telling a story and allowing your images to provide context to that story. For example, if you are training a group of business professionals on how to implement teamwork in the office, you can include an image of a group of people actively talking and collaborating in an office space. And this will help to set the scene and give a few clues as to what the content will be about. And last but not least, modern design is all about relaying a specific message. Now, keeping in mind that the modern learner is really not interested in only hearing about how successful your company is or how many awards the new system that you are training on has won. Modern learners want to know that this information is beneficial, and it's all about delivering an intentional message that helps the learner to grasp what's in it for them. So, we have just discussed what modern design is and why we should implement it. And I think that it's important to review a few foundational graphic design principles to also help you design more strategically. So let's take a look. The first graphic design concept that I would like to review is the use of white space. Now, contrary to the name, white space absolutely does not have to be white. Actually, white space is often called negative space because it allows your designs to feel a little more airy and not too congested. Plus, adding white space to your designs is a great way to achieve a more minimalistic and sleek aesthetic. Next, we have similarity. Similarity is a principle of the Gestalt theory and can be demonstrated in various ways. Essentially, it's having two or more items that share a similar feature, whether it's the color, font, texture, shape, or a combination. Adding similar features is a great way to tie your entire design together. And when I'm designing, I often like to add similar items on the opposite sides of the slide. So for example, if my first element is on the right side of the screen, I'll go ahead and add an element with similar features to the left. Singular focus is our third design principle, and it is a really great way to keep your slides from looking too busy, and it allows your learner to hone in on what is truly important. And you can implement this principle by taking a single object or a small group of objects and placing them together on the screen. And as you can see from the apple basket, this is a great way to zoom into an image and pick up some really awesome detail. All right, so our next principle of design is texture. Now, texture can be applied in various ways, from a close-up picture of wood grains to adding shapes as a frame around the singular focus. Texture acts as a great way to add interest to the white space without competing with other design elements. And last but not least, we have color. Now, color is one of the most familiar graphic design basics, considering it is one of the first things that we've learned as children. But for me, color is often the first step to graphic design. And by establishing a set color scheme, it also acts as a guide throughout the rest of the project. All right, everyone. So we have broken down what modern design is and also why we should be implementing it. And we even reviewed a few graphic design principles. So now it's time to finally hop into PowerPoint and do a bit of designing together. Now, as we prepare to do that, I would love to know your favorite design tool. Perhaps it's PowerPoint or Adobe Suite or even a cool online app like Canva. So if PowerPoint is your favorite design tool, Polina, could you please launch the poll question here? I really think that it would be great to see how many people are familiar with PowerPoint or if they use something else.
All right, so I will go ahead and close the poll and share the results really quickly so that all of you guys can see how many people out of all our attendees are actually using PowerPoint.
Nice.
And we'll hide it. Yep, back. All right.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you guys for sharing. Today, we are going to be working in PowerPoint, but really the tips that I share, you can apply to pretty much any tool. Now, today, we are going to be using my 10 tips and tricks to create a modern cover for an e-learning course. And like I said, these techniques can be used for nearly any program, and you can use them to design your e-learning slides or participant guides and even social media posts. So let's go ahead and start with my first tip, which is to select an image that tells a story. Now, it is so important to be particular when selecting your images. I think we can all agree that they need to be of very high quality and not pixelated or dark, but they also need to be intentional. And remember, modern graphic design is all about familiarity and relatability. And the images that you select should resonate with the learner to help deliver your message. For our course cover, we're going to be delivering this to a group of business professionals. And so I want to select an image of a business professional that the learner can relate to. So let's go ahead and scroll through the images. All right, perfect. So we've got this guy here. He's dressed in kind of a sleek, modern way. He has on his business attire. He looks great. We're definitely going to stick with this picture. So let's go ahead and move on to our second tip, which is also related to images, and that is to actually make the picture really huge, allowing the image to fill up the entire canvas. Now, keep in mind that if you blow up your image, you may have to zoom in or crop it or flip it to help fill out the space while also making sure it fits your design. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm just going to take the corner of the image and stretch it out. And using the corners will also help to maintain that aspect ratio. And by stretching it out to the width of the canvas, you only have to manipulate the top and bottom of the image when you crop, which helps to make it a little bit easier. Okay, let's just do a little adjusting. All right, perfect. And we can go ahead and crop that. All right, awesome. Okay, for step number 3, we are actually going to go back to the basics and add in some shapes. Now, adding shapes helps to separate content on the screen into sections, and it also allows your content to be displayed in a more organized way. I actually like to keep my shapes interesting by using a variety of shapes and tilting them or stacking them to help build interest. Now for our course cover, the shape that I use most often is definitely a rectangle. So let's go ahead and grab one of those. And we're going to start here in the corner, and we're actually going to drag it across the entire canvas. Now this may look a little funny since we literally covered up the entire picture, but it actually leads me to tips number 4 and 5. Which are to use a gradient and to add a transparent overlay. Now, using a transparent overlay is a fantastic way to add color, texture, and interest to your designs. And one thing to keep in mind when using transparent overlays is to ensure that the image is still readable. So you may have to play around with the opacity percentage to find a balance between seeing the background image and also reading the words on the screen. So let's take our rectangle and transform it into a transparent overlay. And we're going to make it a little more interesting by adding a gradient fill. All right, so now that we've added our fill, let's make sure the gradient's going in the right direction. I want it to go from top to bottom. And I only need 2 color points, so we can remove these extras. Okay, so I was actually inspired by the colors in the image, and we're going to make our first color a true white. And then for our second color, let's do like a smoky gray. Perfect. Awesome. All right, so now that we have our color selected, we want to go ahead and, well, first let's take off the outline because we don't need that. And then we're going to go ahead and play around with the transparency. So going back to that first color, I'm going to actually make it really light because I really want to see that background image pull through. Very good. That looks good. And then for the darker image, I want to create a little bit of contrast. So I'll leave it pretty dark, but we'll add a little bit of transparency. And by moving the color stop on the spectrum above, you're actually able to create more coverage on the image, which helps to really warm it up. Okay, so for our next tip, we are actually going to talk about a really hot trend in modern design, and that is using sans serif fonts. Now, when considering fonts, there are generally 2 buckets that the font styles fall into: serif and sans serif, or without serif. Now, in this example of a serif text, do you see those little caps that are on the top and bottoms of each letter, or each of the letters? Those are the serifs. And when you look at sans serif text, you actually don't have those caps, and they create more straight lines and an overall sleeker looking text. Now, some of my favorite sans serif fonts are actually listed on the right-hand side. We've got Calibri, Ladle Light, and my all-time favorite is Fajala 1. Plus, it's super fun to say. So let's go ahead and add some text to our image. Now I'm going to apply another sans serif font, which is Ladle Black. So let's go ahead and start by drawing out our text box and creating a title. Now again, our entire course is going to be for business professionals. So let's call it Success Seminar. That sounds very, very businessy. So let's go ahead and find our Ladle Black. And I really love this color and this font style because it has nice, thick, bold lines, and I think that really speaks to the message of the course. All right, looks good. So we're going to make that a little larger and center it. Perfect. And let's actually change the color. We'll do white because that'll create a little more contrast, and we'll add a shadow to create some depth. Awesome. Okay, let's also make it all uppercase. I think that looks really good. And we're going to stretch this out again here. Okay. And let's make sure it's perfectly in the middle. Okay, looks good. All right, you guys. So PowerPoint actually has another really cool feature where you can space out all the letters that are in your Word. So I'm going to apply a looser fit to our text to help cover a little more ground. And then we can go ahead and add a subtitle. All right, and we'll just put for business professionals. Awesome. All right, looks good. Okay, so moving on to tip number 7, which is actually related to text and font as well, and that is to mix up your font combos. Now, when you're mixing and matching text, you can consider the heights, the widths of the text blocks or individual letters, the color of each word, and the placement of the words, whether they're side by side or one on top of the other. Now for our course cover, I like that we added a subtitle, but I think this font is a little overpowering. So let's see, let's go ahead and change it. I think that Ladle Light will be a really good combination for this. So let's scroll on down. All right, and we're gonna do Ladle Light, nice. Really sleek, again, really matching the message of the course. Okay, let's make it a little smaller since it is the subtitle. And I'm actually going to select it and bring it down a little bit to create some space between the title and the subtitle. All right, let's select both of these and make sure they're perfectly aligned. Awesome. All right, looks pretty good, but I want to go ahead and actually move these both down. I think it'll help to balance out the overall image. Yes, wonderful. All right. So now moving on to step number 8, which is to add texture. Now remember that adding texture is actually one of our design principles. And though our design is nearly finished, I think that we can add an element or two to help fill in some of that white space. So for our image, we are going to insert, let's add a line. I love adding simple lines because it's minimal, but it also helps to add a really good detail. Let's make sure it's straight because, that's important. We don't want it to be crooked. And then we'll change the color to match our text. And let's go ahead and add a shadow to create some depth. Perfect. Now I'm going to go ahead and copy this and add another element of texture to the other side to kind of create a frame around our singular focus, which is the man in the photo. And let's make sure those are aligned. All right. Perfect. Okay, looking good, looking good. Alrighty, so now we are moving on to tip number 9, which is to apply animation. Now, animation is a great way to keep your learners engaged, but you have to be intentional in how you apply it. I mean, just yesterday, my friend Jacob was explaining the importance of not using animation only for the sake of using animation, because you don't really want it to turn into a distraction. So for our course, let's go ahead and create a little button, and we're going to throw on some animation to help add an element of interest. Now to create our button, I'm going to use my favorite shape, a rectangle. But this time I'm going to make it really thin and pretty long because I think that makes it look a little more sleek and again continues on with our theme. Let's change it to a white color and remove the outline. And we can also add a shadow for a little bit of depth. Okay. Now inside of the rectangle, I'm just going to add some basic text. All right, obviously we need to change the color. And to kind of implement that basic principle of similarity, I'm going to use that same smoky gray. Nice. All right, we can make it a little larger, all caps, that looks good. And we'll also stretch it out here as well. Perfect. All right, let's make sure this bad boy is in the middle of the slide because that's important. Okay, perfect. All right, so now let's go ahead and add some animation. And I always love to add just a simple fade in animation. I feel like it's really subtle, but it also adds a really nice impact. All right, looks good. All right, you guys, so now we are on to tip number 10. And last but not least, that is to know your tool. So earlier I asked you guys for what your favorite tool was, and you guys gave me a pretty impressive list with a lot of new tools that I'm going to have to check out myself. But, you know, if you don't know your tool, it's really hard to design with them. So I definitely recommend that you guys hop on in and just kind of figure out where everything is so that you can create awesome content quickly and efficiently. So now we are all done with our design. Let's go ahead and take a look at the final result. Awesome. I think that looks pretty good. And keep in mind, you guys, we created this using only 10 simple steps. And so now that we're done with our design, let's talk about what we should do next. All right. So honestly, if I had to recommend a starting place, it would actually be tip number 10. And that is just jumping on into your system, pressing buttons, and seeing what you come up with. And you never know, you may love your design or you may figure out a new feature. The next thing that I encourage you all to do is to remember that inspiration is all around you. I mean, personally, I love to ride in the passenger seat of the car and watch out of the window with a design eye. You know, really tuning into color schemes of the signs and shapes that are used in the store logos, and even the images on billboards. I mean, all of these advertisements were created by professional graphic designers, so why not take a couple tips from the pros? You can also practice by looking online for inspiration and using your tool of choice to replicate designs. In fact, I actually have quite a few videos on LinkedIn that you can use as a reference for your recreations. You can simply search hashtag design with Andraya and you can see the entire collection. And please be sure to tag me whenever you do because I would love to see what you come up with. And finally, please feel free to send over a connection request. I love connecting with other creatives, and you can find me as Andraya Goodwin on LinkedIn. All right, guys. So that actually is all for me. It's been a blast hanging out with all of you today. And if you guys do have any questions, I will be online a little longer. So feel free to send them our way. And if not, hopefully our paths will cross again soon. So thank you again for having taken some time out of your day to hang out with me. And I hope you all have a great day.
Thank you so much, Andrea. I hope that our attendees found some or learned some really great tips that they can start using right away. All right, so right now let's move on to the questions. First one is from Debbie. What font are you using in this presentation?
Great question, Debbie. I'm actually using my favorite font, which is Fajala 1. Great question.
Awesome. All right, moving on. What did you select to space out the letters more? A question from Lori.
Oh, great question. So let me see here. Paulina, am I still sharing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint. So I actually used, if you're in the Home tab and you have the text box selected, it's this little AV with the two arrows. It's called character spacing. And if you click on that drop down menu, you'll see your options and how it kind of manipulates the text. And then you even have more spacing options at the very bottom.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing a lot.
Yeah.
And um, Melissa is asking, is there a tip you can share on how to properly space between text elements, like you have on your title
Yes.
slide?
Yes, absolutely. So let me see. I'll create like a blank slide really quick. So in order to do your proper alignment, there's a couple things you can do. So I'm going to start by inserting a couple shapes. This, get my rectangle or copy it and paste it a couple times. And let's say I have it kind of all over the screen. Well, the first thing you want to do is select all of them. So you'll click and then hold your Shift key on the keyboard. And while you're still holding it, you can select the other shape elements. And then I release the Shift key. And if you look here at the top, you have Format. So you click on Format. You'll go to the Align drop-down menu, and then you can click on how you want to align them. So for these, let's say I want to align them horizontally. And then if I want to distribute them evenly, I can do that horizontally as well. There you go. And that's that.
Wonderful. Short and
Yeah.
easy tip. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. No problem,
Okay.
Melissa.
And Jean is asking, what about using half of an image on the canvas?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Actually, let me see here. With this image, this is only half of this picture. It shows his whole body in the actual image, but I kind of cropped it down. I feel like as long as it works with your aesthetic and you can still have a high quality picture, definitely feel free to crop it or zoom in and manipulate the photo to work towards your design needs.
Thank you. And the next question is from Arthur. Do you have any resource or tip on how we should align elements in the screen?
Um, so I think that kind of went back to the first question where you can click on the shapes and then use the arrange align options. Is that correct? Did I answer that question for you?
Could you please let us know? Yes.
Yes. Okay. Awesome. Great question.
Okay. And Tony is asking, do you ever use small caps?
That is a great question, Tony. I definitely do. There's probably not any design technique that's too crazy for me, but I think that small caps is a really great way to complement a really minimalistic design. So they're small, they don't take up a lot of space. So that's a really great way just to add a small element of text, where unlike the presentation that we just created, I wanted that bold text because I kind of wanted to deliver a bolder message through the entire design. So I think it really just depends on the audience that you're speaking to and the overall aesthetic, whether you're going for something more minimal or for a design that's a little more bold. That's a great question.
Thanks a lot for covering it. And Steven is asking, what are some of your favorite stock graphics providers?
Ooh, great question. Let me think. I love pexels.com. That's really good. You know what? Actually, if you go online, I want to say, let me take a look. I actually have a list of really awesome places where you can get a lot of free information. And it's not my list. It's actually a really good friend of mine. Her name is Deanna Fisher. So if you will go to www.deannafischer.com, /tools .html. I know that was so long. Polina, if you could share that, or I can share it, that was so long. But she has cultivated an entire list of free resources, whether you're looking for graphics or stock images. And I always reference this. Like, it's been so helpful. Let me see. I can send you the link. There you go. It's a great question.
All right. And Jean is asking, what's your advice to, I'm sorry, for those who want to insert an infographic?
That's a great question. I definitely think that infographics are super helpful and a great way to break down content. So definitely, I would enter them into my e-learning courses, or we actually are creating a whole slew of brand new training content for a new system that we're doing a national rollout for here at my company. And we're really looking into infographics to help break down a lot of complex information. So I love them. Great question, Jean.
Thanks a lot. I think that's a great tip. Okay, so it looks like we have covered all the questions at this point. So I would like to thank all of you guys for coming today and for being so active and for asking your questions. And of course, Andrea, for doing such a wonderful, short and sweet presentation on how to make your content more modern. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It was so much fun.
Okay, I hope that everyone has a wonderful day and see you at the next webinar. Bye, everybody. Bye, Andrea.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Have a great day.